Good afternoon. It's going to be really tough to follow YouTube, but we're going to do our best to try to do that. And so let me welcome you all here. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this next keynote session. I'm Marcel Fenez. I'm the Global Leader of Entertainment and Media for PwC. And for the next 90 minutes or so, I'm going to guide you through, first of all, a snapshot of PwC's latest Global Entertainment and Media outlook. And then I'm going to be joined on stage first by Bruce Rosenblum, President of Warner Brothers TV, and then after that by Andrea Wong, President of Sony International Production, to hear their views and their insights on what is happening both in their organizations but also generally. So let me start off by giving you, as I say, a little bit of a snapshot of what PwC sees happening in the industry over the next 5 years. The theme of this year's Outlook, which we've been doing now for 13 years, is what we call an acknowledgement that we're at the end of the digital beginning. As I've been to many conferences over the last 3 or 4 years, there seems to be a consistency of message that we're all understanding what digital is about. So let's stop talking about it as if it's new, because when things are new, what we generally tend to do is we put them to one side, we set up a special division, and we try to incubate some new business. Well, we believe that once you're no longer at the beginning, that you're actually in the normal, you have to considerably change the structures that you have within your organizations to deal with this new normal. But before I go into exploring that in a little bit more detail, I just want to give you a snapshot of what we're seeing in the industry overall. And so what I'm going to just give you a bit of an introduction to are the sort of growth rates that we're seeing across all of entertainment and media, and that includes print, and it includes TV, online, whatever. And then I'm going to look at specifically, of course, what's happening to TV. So globally, we're looking at an industry that is still growing over the next 5 years, between 5 and 6% compound each year. That doesn't mean each year grows at the same rate, but that's what we're seeing over a 5-year period. And you may be able to see that obviously, the world is not as one, regions are not as one, and we see considerable differences in growth rates between the mature markets, the BRICS, which themselves are actually not behaving entirely the same. They all grow well, but they are obviously very different markets. And then what I call my sort of golden 8 territories where we're seeing very, very strong growth. Again, the profile of these is quite different. Indonesia, for example, a very strong TV market, certainly, and also a very strong advertising market. And then you've got others that have different characteristics. Canada, which is obviously the opening video. I have to mention Canada for all you Canadians. Thank you, Canada. Canada's market actually growing in excess of the average of 5.7, around about 6.5%. So some good background in terms of growth. Where's the growth coming from? Well, let's get real. It's all coming from digital, almost all. The vast majority of the growth that we see in the industry, the total industry, is coming from this new normal, from digital. So let's get used to it. In terms of, let's look at what's happening in the advertising world, and what I have here are 2 pie charts which show where is advertising going in terms of and making a comparison between 2011 and 2016. And what you can see from this, hopefully, is that TV is by no means dead. It's actually maintaining its share of ad revenues globally, although what I should say, there are a number of markets where it is not. China, for example, TV is losing share to digital and online. But in other markets, we're seeing TV hold its own. And even when we reallocate some of those digital dollars back on what we call by an ownership basis, it's the same sort of story. TV is still growing. And one of the reasons for that is that a lot of the new digital money is still going into search. Search is still what kicks the digital number up by a long way. On the consumer spending side, again, TV is a great driver of growth. Consumer spending on all media over the next 5 years is only going to grow somewhere between 3 and 4%. Pay TV, and that includes obviously over-the-top revenues, are growing at 6.8%. So again, this is a good story. And with the exception of actually the video game sector, TV is still outperforming all others. And actually, if you can see here, you can see on the right-hand side, obviously sectors of media that are performing less well. For that, read print. OTT revenues, which we've already heard about in the last session, are continuing to grow. And in fact, by 2012, we're actually, by the end of this year, we're actually looking at the fact that such revenues will actually have overtaken VOD revenues, and that's in aggregate for globally. So let's look at the story. When we're at the end of the digital beginning, what is driving this new digital normal? Well, we believe that what's driving it is the consumer activity. And in terms of the consumer, what I'd like to do is to introduce you to a little video that we made based on our interviews of you, consumers, in the street over the last few months. In the past few years, those of you that have been to this session before will have seen I tend to do this. And in previous years, there has been certain key messages that the consumer has been telling us. They don't care about channels, but they love content. And they love the added value content experience even more. It's less about the when and the where, and it's much more about the convenience. They're also telling us we kind of don't care about the service providers, but we love our devices. We don't care, we don't really bother whether we own it anymore, we're quite happy to stream it. So long gone are the libraries that we used to own. And ultimately, at the end of the day, we're actually now quite keen to move away from storage on devices and to go to cloud storage. But let's have a look at what they're saying now. So let's hear from them.
I always have my laptop out when I'm watching TV. It's kind of, you know, I call us the multitasking generation.
Tenho sempre o computador ligado, eu estou no iPad, eu estou no iPhone, eu estou em tudo simultaneamente. Na realidade, eu acho que eu não foco em uma coisa, eu foco em 3, 4 ao mesmo tempo.
Sometimes it's the iPad mood, sometimes it's the iPhone mood.
有陣時我哋睇電視嘅時候咧，見到一啲有趣嘅話題，咁我好想同我突然間醒起有個朋友講嘅時候，我就會可能攞佢電話 WhatsApp 佢一下。
睇緊電視，如果賣廣告嘅時間咧，我會可能睇到個廣告啊，呢個產品介紹得唔錯喎，我都會用呢啲時間即刻上網去 check 下，究竟佢介紹嘅嘢啱唔啱我用，可能會即刻買添。
I decide what video and TV content to watch primarily via word of mouth from my friends, write-ups on websites that I trust, and also based on who the creator of the content is.
If a TV program is reoccurring on a social networking site like Facebook or Twitter, then I start to get a little bit interested, so I'll go and check it out.
I'm always curious as to what's recommended to me, but I'm not always satisfied with it because they don't know me. Really, it's just the computer watching. But then every now and then it comes up with something that I really, really like.
Kijk, langzaamaan zie ik gewoon dus dat de kwaliteit van de content wordt steeds beter en beter. En dingen waar ik vroeger vond van ja, dat is het niet waard om ervoor te betalen, het wordt gewoon steeds mooier. En ja, dat vind ik gewoon leuk om dat dan te hebben en daar betaal ik graag voor.
Ik geef meer geld uit nu aan digitale content. De belangrijkste reden daarvoor is omdat er meer legale mogelijkheden toe zijn.
I'd say I'm spending more on entertainment this year. My iPad can be used in conjunction with other devices as well, so I think that's what helps.
Concerten vind ik een belevenis, daar moet je gewoon naartoe. Dat vind ik zonde om op televisie te zien.
There's a live concert going on and if I can't attend it, I can pay for it on the net and watch it easily.
I find it to be a lot easier to watch what everyone else is watching when you can do it on your own time.
On peut s'accrocher et voir la télévision d'une autre manière. Et surtout, on est à notre rythme. On consomme la télévision, on ne subit pas un rythme des publicités, programme, publicité, programme. C'est un peu nous qu'on choisit.
What I want, when I want it. I'd say it's 24/7, basically my playlist and what I want to see. It's my entertainment.
O que mais me impede de assistir conteúdo de vídeo e TV seria mais um dispositivo móvel por uma questão de qualidade de conexão mesmo.
すっごいかっこいいのこの曲って思ってそれを買おうとするとテリトリーリストリクションのエラーが出ちゃうっていうのは
Tem site, por exemplo, da CBS e eu vou receber update no meu Facebook. Esse é o preview do novo show que vai ser essa segunda. Aí eu clico para assistir e falo, desculpa, não está disponível no seu continente, que eu acho isso aí absurdo, eu acho que...
それはまあちょっとなんとかしてほしいですね。
If I could use a pay-per-view service to watch a program that was broadcast in another country, yeah, I'd definitely do that.
好似最近Lady Gaga 嚟香港嘅演唱會，佢係冇 live 直播嘅。咁我想俾錢睇都睇唔到，咁呢個係一個問題咯。咁所以如果有嘅話，可能我都會俾錢睇直播嘅。
Dress I was looking at the other day, and then suddenly when I was opening my mail this morning, the adverts around the page, there was that dress again saying, oh, here it is, this is how much it is. If there was a special offer attached to something that I'd been particularly looking at, then maybe it would work.
Irritant als er reclames tussen websites doorkomen en zo van dingen waar ik misschien 1 keer op ben geweest en die dan heel groot en telkens weer te zien zijn.
有唔同類型做緊 promotion 啊，做緊啲 campaign 嘅message send 翻俾我，都唔會覺得佢滋擾嘅。譬如我經過海港城，我突然間見到 Faces 嗰度原來有好多唔同類型嘅化妝品做緊特價喎，咁可能我都會收到個 message 嘅時候，可能會更加即係可能都會 encourage 到我過去嘅。
I feel the need to unplug pretty much every waking hour of every single day.
I've had my iPhone for like a year now. I don't think I've ever turned it off. Like not once.
If I didn't have internet, boy, I'd be freaking out.
So he's going to freak out if he doesn't have the internet. But just let's recap on some of the things that the consumer is telling us, because this is the digital normal. A couple of points that really to stress. Obviously the multi-screen experience, that came through loud and clear. The fact that recommendations truly do shape choice, so the social influencer is alive and well and is the person that we need to really embrace. But very, very interesting, we're hearing consumers, 4 or 5 years ago we were talking about the death of prime time and it became mind time. But I do believe that we're beginning to see the creation of what I would call shared time. Where we're actually sharing that content experience with our friends. So we're watching it when we want to, but we're also watching it with our community or with our friends. What else did they say? Well, I think a couple of things. Obviously, they are saying, whether we believe them or not, consumers are saying they will pay for quality and experience. And in fact, what they're actually saying is it's the experience that really differentiates the content. So content is king, but experience is where we're going to make the money. Around targeted advertising, I mean, if you compare what the sophistication of the consumer these days, who 2 or 3 years ago was just saying, it's all intrusive and I'm not interested in it. That woman, I think she was from London, who looked at that dress and then the following morning, there it was. Now, if she actually had a coupon or a discount coupon when she was passing a shop where that dress was in, that would be even better. And that's where we talk about contextual advertising. And then the big frustration, and this is a point I hope to pick up with our keynote interviews this afternoon, is around, if you don't make it available to me, how can I pay for it? So what are we seeing? Well, in response to this new normal, we are seeing industry fundamentally look at what are the new roles that might exist in the value chain. And that is because the value chain is fundamentally different from what it used to be. On here, there are some examples of some of those new roles. I'm not going to go through them all for interest of time. The key point being here is that what we are seeing is we're seeing media organizations truly look at where do they add value. To use an analogy from the newspaper industry, is it all about great journalism or do I actually have to own the trucks? And that is where we see a lot of innovation around defining what are these new roles. What's involved in doing that? Well, if we look at, and now I have the same problems as Roy Kinsell, there we go. How do companies actually do that? Well, hardly surprisingly, they are embedding the relationship with the consumer at heart of everything they do. Now, fundamentally, that means a shift for many from what is basically a B2B business model to increasingly B2C. But obviously, the consumer, there is a concern from all this consumer interaction, which is around privacy. We have seen in the last 18 months or so a lot of very high-profile incidents of loss of data. And so really, I think there needs to be a shift from it's not just all kind of mining everything, all the data, but it is what is the data that actually consumers are willing to part with and for why. A lot of consumer research has been done around this, and basically, without any doubt, consumers are still willing to give their information, but they want to know what that's going to be used for, and if you give them something in return, then they will really give it to you. And so I think that one of the key things is convincing the consumer to part with their data, but to do so in the context of trust. And that is all about, as I say, explaining to the consumer what they're actually going to do with the data. After all, it's my data, so the consumer has to be in control. Well, how are they doing this? There are two issues. One are the external factors, and let's be real, the piracy issues are still out there. Regulation in almost every market that I visit is a key discussion. Whether it's how do we create a level playing field, because after all, certain new forms of distribution are not regulated, whereas perhaps the more traditional ones are and have heavy burdens. Or it may relate to different rules around censorship. The internal areas, I would say, can be actually summarized, and I've given some examples up here, I'm not going to go through them all, but what lies at the heart of all of them is that when you're no longer at the beginning, you need to embed this new thing, which is now not new, the normal, into everything you do. So basically making digital a key element of not only the content production process, but also marketing, such that we will get to a stage where the focus is on content again, and on distribution again, and on marketing. They just all happen to be in a digital environment. Let's not tag it as being something different. So that's why we believe that the end of the digital beginning has arrived. And what I'm now going to do is to introduce you to the first of our keynote interviews. And before I invite Bruce Rosenblum to come on stage, what I'd like to do is just to show you a little video of what's happening at Warner Brothers.